What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the brother Wizzy Way for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. Much respect to you, brother, long-time subscriber, showing love again to Too Raw for TV. And he had a question, and his question was, who was the better teammate in New Orleans, Boogie Cousins or Anthony Davis? Now, of course, I'm pretty sure he means the better player, because there's other things you got to take into account when you say better teammate. You mean as far as, leadership, as far as relationship with teammates. I believe he's clearly talking about who was the better player on the court. Okay. Now, one way you could look at this as, well, Anthony Davis was there for what? How long was he a member of the Pelicans? Was it 7 years? It was a long time. So he has the larger body of work overall, whereas Boogie Cousins was only there for really 1 calendar year before he suffered that terrible injury, which altered his career. So if you look at it from that perspective, it ain't even close. It's Anthony Davis. I mean, it's not even really close. But if you're talking about the period of time when they were teammates, when Boogie Cousins was traded from Sacramento to the New Orleans Pelicans, I think it was February 2017, up until when he suffered that injury. I think it was an ACL injury. No, was it ACL? Yeah, I think it was it was Achilles injury. Take that back. I think it was Achilles injury. I think it was January or early February 2018. He suffered that Achilles injury. And after that, subsequently, he suffered, I think it was a quad injury and an ACL injury, which he never fully recovered from. I mean, he was never the most mobile, athletic guy anyway, but that totally took away his mobility. But his skills allowed him to remain, when he fully came back, to be a productive center. But he suffered from injury issues for the most part for the rest of his abbreviated NBA career. But let's focus on this. Who was the better of the teammates? Because they were supposed to be the latest incarnation of Twin Towers, which we've seen in the history of the NBA before. Twin Towers. I think the most successful Twin Tower duo was probably David Robinson and Tim Duncan, who, of course, together won 2 NBA championships together, 1999 and 2003. Then, of course, you had Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon. They never won championships. A lot of it has to do with the injuries that piled up for Ralph Sampson. But they did reach an NBA Finals in 1986, and which they unfortunately had to go up against one of the great teams of all times, the 1986 Boston Celtics. So we've seen it before. Also, you had a Twin Towers of sorts. They weren't the tallest Twin Towers, but with Washington, with the then Bullets, with Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes. So we've seen this before. McHale and Parrish, also, if you include Bird as well. Look, to me, I think the better of the two, even then, even though Boogie Cousins was playing amazing ball, I think the better of the two was Anthony Davis. Now, Anthony Davis was just starting to come into his own as a great player around that time. He had been developing since he came into the league in 2012-ish. Boogie Cousins, at that point in time, you could say he was arguably the best center in the league. Um, Earlier on, it was a battle probably between him and Dwight Howard. By that point in time, it was probably a battle between him and I would say Joel Embiid, but you can make a strong argument it was DeMarcus Cousins. The only thing to me I think DeMarcus Cousins had on Anthony Davis at that time would be size. And when I say size, I mean bulk, strength, you know, because even though they're both listed 6'10", uh, Anthony Davis, as you can see in this photo, is clearly taller than DeMarcus Cousins. He's listed as 6'10", at least he was, Anthony Davis. But to me, he looks like he's more around, that might be, I'll put it like this. Anthony Davis being 6'10" is probably his bare foot height, as they used to do in the past until recently. They would measure guys, you know, I take it back. Up until like the 70s or 80s, they used to measure guys barefoot. And then from like the late 70s, 80s until recently, they measured guys in shoes. So I think with Anthony Davis, they measured him barefoot because with shoes, he got to be like 6'11" and some change. And I think with Boogie, 6'10" is probably his height in shoes. And probably barefoot, he's maybe like 6'9" and 3/4 or something, or 6'9" and a half. But anyway, bulk-wise, Boogie Cousins is bigger. Boogie Cousins was like 265, 270. At that time, Anthony Davis was probably 230 something. It was a little smaller than he is right now with the Lakers. Boogie, I would say, was the better passer and playmaker. The better passer, the better playmaker. Boogie is a little bit better, I would say, also with 3-point shooting. A little bit better. Not, you know, he's not goddamn Karl Anthony Towns, but, you know, I would say at that point in time, he was probably around a 34, 35% 3-point shooter. Anthony Davis can shoot the three, but that's never really been implemented into his game with the proclivity and the production that we saw with Boogie. Like Boogie playing with Anthony Davis, and a lot of it had to do with spacing as well. Anthony Davis became more of a prolific 3-point shooter, taking a lot more of them. Matter of fact, at that point in time, he probably was shooting the three more than we had been accustomed to seeing for a guy as multifaceted skill set wise with Boogie. Now, having said that, pretty much every other thing you can think of, I think Anthony Davis is better. Anthony Davis, despite being a little smaller, was a better finisher around the rim. He was more efficient. He had a better mid-range game. He had a better, he just had a better touch around the rim. His mid-range shot, as I just said, was better. He was just more efficient. And when it comes to rebounding, they were about the same. You know what I'm saying? Probably averaging around 11, 12, 13 rebounds. They're about the same. But the biggest difference between the two is that Boogie was never a really good defender. Anthony Davis, at his best, is a defensive player of the year level defender. I mean, he's a defensive anchor. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the biggest aspect of the game that I think separates Anthony Davis and Boogie. So even then, I thought that Anthony Davis was a better player. Also, if you look at it from this perspective, when they were both on bad teams, right? Because, you know, the hope was that together they could do something special. And maybe they could have. I mean, because people forget that team had them. That team had, I believe, Rajon Rondo, who was going to be the leader, because we all know Anthony Davis is not no damn leader. And Boogie Cousins just is too much of a head case to be a leader. I mean, that's not to be dismissive of him, but he's a hothead, and he just don't have that leadership type intangible. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a bigger version of Rasheed Wallace without the defense. You know what I'm saying? Like Rasheed Wallace is good, but he's not that. He can provide some leadership because of experience, but you need more of a level-headed guy to be the leader. And that's where, Rajon Rondo and Drew Holiday come into mind. And that team, if they had got time to gel, I think they could have potentially won a championship if they had stayed together and they stayed healthy, which is always an issue with Anthony Davis. And always, I guess to a certain extent would have been an issue with Boogie. But if they had stayed healthy, I'm just thinking. You could see them winning. I'll tell you like this, because remember, Boogie Cousins got hurt. And that Pelicans team still went to the second round, if I'm not mistaken, in 2019. But I think they lost to the Warriors, who ultimately went to the finals and lost to the Raptors because they had injury issues. No, I take it back. I got my years mixed up. That was 2018. Okay, so they lost to the Pelicans. The Pelicans lost to the Warriors in 2018. And that team went to the finals and beat the Cavaliers. Yeah, I had my years mixed up. All right, so look. If the Klay Thompson injury still occurs, and LeBron leaves to go to LA, with the super teams out of the way, I could possibly see the Pelicans winning a championship. I could see that. But as we already see, winning that title kind of zapped the focus and the intensity from AD. So I could see that team possibly winning a championship, maybe the bubble year, since AD's not in LA. You could see them winning in 2020, maybe 2021, tops, maybe. But then after that, I just tend to think that nature takes its course. But that, I mean, Anthony Davis is going to be Anthony Davis, meaning that you're going to see street clothes emerge. Boogie Cousins being that big of a guy, 270, just the way that he was built. You just don't tend to see those guys play for a very long time, man. It's just, there are exceptions. Bob Lanier played a long career, but even with him, his body started breaking down toward the end. Guys who are built like that, 270, 280, they just don't play very long. They start inevitably having, knee and foot injuries. But yeah, they could have won a championship, possibly. You could have. It's possible. So in conclusion, I think that even though Boogie Cousins was playing some great basketball, I got to give it to Anthony Davis. I think Anthony Davis was, even then, he was the better player. Now, were there stretches where Boogie played better? Yeah. But, let me just check something out here. Boogie, let's see. Boogie shot about 46% for his career. In this day and age, is that a great percentage for a big man? Now, if this was like 2000, okay, fine. Even, with Chris Webber now, but even Chris Webber didn't shoot 46%. That's indicative of the fact that Boogie took a lot of outside shots and threes. And Boogie was never a great mid-range shooter. Like, he was probably like in the mid-30 percentile with mid-range shots and 35, 36% even at his best with threes. Anthony Davis did not. Anthony Davis was he had a better shot selection. You know what I'm saying? So Anthony Davis is well over 50% for his career. And in some years, he's like 56, 57%. So, yeah, give me that. You know what I'm saying? The only problem with Anthony Davis is that sometimes he disappears. Sometimes he disappears. You know what I'm saying? So that's the problem with him. The point I was going to make too, I got away from it. Another reason why I give Anthony Davis the edge. Both of them played on some bad teams by themselves, right? But Anthony Davis had a little bit more success taking the Pelicans to the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? I think in those 7 years he was with, I think it was 7 years he was with the Pelicans. They went to the playoffs, I think, twice. Whereas with Boogie Cousins, those Kings teams never did shit. Never. You know? So at the end of the day, when I look at everything, I give the fact that I think Boogie was a better playmaker and better passer. Rebounding might have been about a wash. Scoring the basketball as far as points per game at their peaks, they both were prolific scorers. But I think that Davis was the more efficient scorer with the better shot selection, obviously. Better finisher around the rim. Although I could argue that Boogie Cousins was a little bit more, he was better probably at finishing around contact at that time because Davis was smaller. But overall, Davis was more efficient. And Davis was the better mid-range scorer, mid-range shooter. Boogie was better at shooting threes to a certain extent. He was more efficient at shooting threes, but he took a excessive amount of them for the era that he played in. And that, to me, drained his field goal percentage to a certain extent. Boogie wasn't nowhere near in the class of Davis as a defender. Davis was a better shot blocker. Davis was the better rim protector. Davis was just a better defender all around. Like, it's not even close. You could even argue that Boogie was sort of a bad defender. And Boogie was, now look, like I said, Davis is not necessarily a great leader, but Boogie was a bit of a head case. Boogie was volatile. You know what I'm saying? And Davis at least took some of them teams to the playoffs, the Pelicans. So to me, it's just my opinion. You know what I'm saying? You might have a different opinion, but I kind of gotta give it to Davis. But anyway, we'll never know what that could have been, man, that duo. They could have done something maybe, especially in that era as the Warriors super team, you know, could have still fallen apart. LeBron could have left Cleveland, I guess, still in this universe or multiverse, you want to call it. And ultimately, you know, you could see them squeezing in a championship when the league was a little bit weak after that little era. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.